Hello everybody, and last time out we talked about the James Bond films, so I thought we'd talk about the Star Trek movies this time. So, again, we'll work in reverse order. Star Trek, created by Gene Roddenberry, first appeared in 1966, first appeared in Britain in 1969. Original Star Trek, of course, came to an end in 1969 over in America, and then the first film came out 10 years later. So in reverse order, the very worst Star Trek film is Star Trek Into Darkness. It should be Star Trek Into Shitness. J.J. Abrams' second film, the one with Benedict Cumberbatch supposedly playing Khan. I have never seen an actor less suited to a role other than Daniel Craig as James Bond. Everybody just seems to be hyperactive and running around and yelling and screaming at each other, and nobody seems very professional. This is meant to be a starship run by adults. It seems to be run by a bunch of teenagers. It's garbage story, makes no sense. The plot, when you even start to think about it, is slightly bit, just falls apart instantly. So RoboCop defrosts Khan, we'll call him Khan Light, to build weapons and starships. He's 300 years old. How the hell is he going to know how to design a starship? He has no knowledge of it. It'd be like getting Napoleon to build you an atomic bomb. That's why would you even think that was a good story point? There are so many things wrong with the plot of the film, the way it's put together. Spock screaming Khan at the end. No, this is just garbage. Absolute crap. Just killed Star Trek stone dead on the big screen, although they did sort of beat its husk one more time with Star Trek Beyond, which is the next one on this list. Again, dreadful film, horrible plot, makes no sense. The villain's entire motivation for being a villain is that he's just a crazy bastard who likes fighting and just doesn't want peace at all. I don't think anybody in the military who's ever served wants to go to war, ever. So to have this entire raison d'etre for doing all these horrible things that he's doing is, I just want to fight people. Well, why don't you just get in a boxing ring and just go at it for days, months on end, if that's what you think. Garbage film, horrible. J.J. Abrams amazingly did not direct that one. It was directed by that bloke who directs the stupid Fast and the Furious films, which are again dreadful. The only one of those I like is the first one. Next one, Star Trek Insurrection, awful film. Played as just a TV episode of The Next Generation, and not a very good one. In fact, there's a couple of episodes of The Next Generation which are virtually the same plot. Who watches the Watchers? And it's called Journey's End. I think it's the one where Wesley Crusher leaves the ship finally at last. There's all these Native Americans, and they have to move them to another planet because the who is it? The Cardassians, I think, want to take over the planet. Yeah, total rubbish. And the bad guys in the film, they're not actually the bad guys, because they were ostracized from this planet because they said, well, the people on the planet are actually a bunch of xenophobic assholes who don't want to share the planet with anybody and its regenerative properties. Okay, so Picard then decides that he wants to go against Starfleet orders because he's feeling a bit horny with this woman, and this planet can save billions of people, cure illnesses, all the rest of it. I think Spock's line in Wrath of Khan, when he said the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, comes into focus right there. You shouldn't even be on this planet anyway. Piss off. Yeah, rubbish film, horrible. The only decent thing about it is the music score by Jerry Goldsmith. Really disappointing film. Next one, Star Trek V: The Final Frontier, one where Kirk goes to meet God. What does God need with Starship? What can possibly be made out of that film? His original idea, William Shatner, he wrote and directed this. His original idea had nothing to do with finding God. It was all about this guy who's actually basically taking the Enterprise to hell and basically torturing all the crew with mind control images and stuff. Much darker film. I think it would have been far more interesting. What we got was basically a compromise. You know, we're dealing with some really weighty issues here, like what is it to believe in God? Is God actually out there? is God within us or whatever, and you've got Scotty knocking himself out on a pipe. Really? Yeah, is that the best you can come up with? I actually saw that film at the cinema when it first came out. I saw it on my 7th birthday, which is going to date me, because that's the day that it came out in Britain. Yeah, not a great film. Could have had a potential to be a lot more than it was. At least it had ideas. At least the movie had ideas, unlike the garbage that J.J. Abrams pours out. Next film, Star Trek 2009. Looks very nice. It's like a cake that's really lovely. You eat it, you forget it afterwards. And if you actually remembered it afterwards, you probably throw it up because the ingredients are terrible. Plot makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Bad guy, pissed off, comes back in time, doesn't warn his people that his planet's star's about to go supernova, waits for 25 years, mooches around for no reason, waiting for Spock to turn up. Spock turns up, he says, I want revenge on you because you killed my planet when he had nothing to do with it. Pathetic garbage. And he's got this drill device and he needs to drill into a planet to drop this stuff in which will create a black hole. But if you just created a black hole next to the planet, it would suck the planet in anyway. So why does he need to drill into the planet? Oh, so we can have an action scene, that's why. Yeah, plot makes no sense. Looks very nice. It's so fast moving that you don't get to think about the plot. It's just mindless action. It's like a Marvel film. It's just completely mindless. Don't pay attention to it, because if you did, you'd just drive yourself crazy. Next one, Star Trek Generations. I've given that film a hard time over the years for having a plot which makes no sense. Soren, his genius plan is he wants to get back to this thing called the Nexus, which gives eternal life. Time has no meaning, etc., etc. He got into the thing originally on a ship. The ship was then destroyed, and his entire genius plan is to destroy stars so that the gravity will change the course of this Nexus thing, so he can go to a planet and jump back into it. And he says he can't get into it on a ship because it will destroy the ship. Well, how did he get into the first place? He was on a ship. If it was a Next Generation episode, it should have been the last one, and All Good Things should have been the first film, because All Good Things is a far better story. The whole scene where the Enterprise gets destroyed for no reason, that's stupid beyond words. Why don't you just press the big button that says fire and just keep pressing it until the other ship goes bang? You know, if it was a computer game, that would be just called a button basher, but I think in this case it actually might work if you just press fire, 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 fire. You know, up, down, left, right, bang, bang, bang. You know, do that. The worst part about it is, well, cover your ears if you don't want to hear. Captain Kirk dies at the end of this film for no reason whatsoever. Falls off a bridge. Instead of captain on the bridge, it's bridge on the captain. The original ending is Kirk gets shot in the back. Yeah, that's how Kirk meets his end. He gets shot in the back by Alex DeLarge out of Clockwork Orange. Compared to J.J. Abrams' stuff, though, it's absolute Shakespeare. At least it actually feels like Star Trek. Anyway, next one, Star Trek motion picture. Everybody calls it the motion sickness or the slow motion picture. It takes forever to get anywhere. It was originally the pilot episode of a second Star Trek show that got turned into the film. They actually did an episode of the original series called The Changeling, which was exactly the same plot. I am nomad, I am perfect, and he thinks Kurt's its creator. Exactly the same story, except that took 45 minutes. This movie takes 3 times longer than that to tell exactly the same story, and it's nice to have the crew back, but the crew just aren't right. Kirk's really grumpy and miserable. Spock's not his usual self. He's not really snarky with bones. It's like they're just going through the motions because they haven't figured it out because they've been away for 10 years. Next in the list is Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. One with the whales. I can see why people like it, but it's not really my type of thing. There's no real threat or any big issue to overcome. Like in, say, in City on the Edge of Forever, they have to go back and have Joan Collins die so that the future can be saved to stop Nazi Germany from winning the Second World War. In this, we need to bring a couple of whales forward in time so that it can make this probe thing disappear that's vaporizing all the oceans. Well, why don't you just blow the probe up? You know, why don't you just shoot the probe? Oh, it kills any starship that goes near it. Have you never heard of a long-range homing torpedo? It's not bad, it's pretty funny. The nuclear vessels and all that sort of stuff, it's okay. It's fairly lightweight, it's harmless really. Next one, Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock. I really enjoy that film. I think it carries a lot of the plot and the story from Wrath of Khan on very well. Christopher Lloyd, fantastic villain. He really has a really good challenge for Kirk. I don't want to reveal too much about it because I think you should go and watch it if you've not watched it or for a long time. The stakes are really, really understandable and high in it. You know, they've got to get back to the planet, they've got to go and do what they need to do as quickly as possible before everything goes wrong. The Enterprise isn't up to specs because of, you'll find out in a minute, because this is a direct follow-on from Wrath of Khan. Fantastic music score by James Horner as well. I think it's just a really, really solid film, really enjoyable. Next one, Star Trek First Contact, one with the Borg. I don't like the idea of the Borg Queen, but it does follow on very well from the series, from Best of Both Worlds and episodes like Descent and I, Borg and stuff like that. And of course it ends up being revisited in the final series of Picard. Don't bother with the first two series of Picard, they're absolute garbage. They're awful. The third series of Picard is Next Generation Season 8. Completely new writers, completely new composer. The feel of the show is back, all of the old crew are back. It's great, but the point of this is First Contact. Again, Picard has to fight the Borg aboard the Enterprise, while Riker is down on Earth and he's helping the guy build the first warp drive ship and complete the first warp drive. Plays off really, really well. Some good humour, great action. Actually unusual for a Star Trek film at this point. Generally, again, it was more like the series where it was a little bit more talky, a bit more thoughtful, but people really liked the fact that it was a little bit more dramatic. Next one, Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. I love that film. I saw it on the opening night on the 14th of February 1992. I went with my mum. It was the only time I've ever seen people dressed in costumes. Absolutely fantastic film, really edgy. The Klingons need to make peace. It's like Chernobyl and the end of the Cold War, but in space. So will they make peace with the Federation? Will they finally settle this thing that's been going on since Errand of Mercy in the first season of original Star Trek? I think it plays really, really well. It's had some good ideas. The mystery in it is quite predictable because you kind of know where this is going from quite early on. Again, I won't spoil anything, but it adds an interesting element to it. Last film in the series, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, absolutely the best Star Trek film. One of the greatest science fiction and one of the greatest movies ever made, in my opinion. Superb music score. Ricardo Montalban as Khan. He is Khan. He's not this pasty-faced loser who's actually Sherlock Holmes. Khan was this massive strapping bloke who can lift people up with one arm. He doesn't have to yell and scream because he is just that threatening. Added to that, you've got William Shatner as Kirk. It's the best acting you'll ever see William Shatner doing. And he doesn't do the whole pausing dramatically very much. There's only one scene where he goes full on tilt. I'm not going to go into that because you know what I'm talking about. The story is really, really tight. It has a lot of stakes to it, an awful lot of stakes to it, especially at the end, which I won't go into because I think you need to see this film and enjoy it. Wrath of Khan, absolutely top drawer, superb. You may have noticed I have not mentioned Star Trek Nemesis. I don't count it as a Star Trek film at all, because it's not a Star Trek film. There's only a couple of moments in there which feel in any way like the series it's supposed to be. The director had no clue about Star Trek. In fact, he openly hated it. He kept calling the actors the wrong names. The plot is garbage. You know, I'm not even going to bother with it. I saw it at the cinema. I just want this film to stop. The whole final act with Data, completely pointless. You didn't need to do that at all. Just an embarrassment all round, and it killed Star Trek for 6 or 7 years, and rightly so, because it was awful. Absolutely horrible film. When it's a real shame, because the action and special effects are actually pretty good, and of course Tom Hardy. I love Tom Hardy, fantastic, brilliant actor. I know a lot of girls like him too, but you know, not my style. I mean, I like Linda Hamilton, what can I say, Sarah Michelle Gellar. But anyway, that's my ranking of the Star Trek films. In terms of Star Trek shows, from bottom to top, I don't count anything post 2005 because it's not Star Trek apart from the third series of Picard. Complete garbage, to just ignore it. That Discovery show just needs to just die. Fortunately, I think it's been cancelled. Enterprise comes last. That's just the most bland, forgettable show you could possibly imagine. Supposedly it had some good ideas. I couldn't get past more than about 3 or 4 episodes of it, and that final episode absolutely stunk. Voyager, bland, seen it all before. They had no ideas about how to do this. It started off with this really promising idea about 2 disparate crews having to get across 75 years worth of space. It lasted about 3 episodes, and then it just went back to being, oh, it's just business as usual. We've seen all this before in Next Generation, except Next Generation, it was actually tight and the writing was excellent. In this, the characters change from week to week and episode to episode. Janeway just changes from this psychotic woman into being this lovey-dovey mother character from episode to episode. It's pathetic. And it's nothing to do with the acting. Kate Mulgrew is a fantastic actress, but the writing sucks in that show. Deep Space Nine, controversial. Some people love it, some people hate it. I really enjoy Deep Space Nine. Yes, it's dark, yes, it's grim, yes, it's gritty, but the writing is so good and the characters are so interesting that it kind of overshadows all of that. I liked it because it was a bit different. Started off quite slowly. The first 2 series are an absolute bore, but you need to get through those to set up the story to where the Dominion comes into it, and the whole Founders and the Jem'Hadar and how that all plays into it. Original being my second favourite. And you got the great contrast with Kirk, Spock and Bones. The stories still hold up 60 years later. They're still fantastic. Episodes like Amok Time, The Doomsday Machine, Mirror Mirror, City on the Edge of Forever, Errand of Mercy, Space Seed, Trouble with Tribbles, Enterprise Incident, they're all still fantastically watchable. My top Star Trek series though is Next Generation. I will always love Next Generation because that was my Star Trek. It was the first TV Star Trek show that I watched. I love Patrick Stewart, I love Brent Spiner. Next Generation was my Star Trek, is, will and always will be my Star Trek, and will always be my go-to comfort food TV show. Alright, so I hope this finds you well, and catch you later. Ta-da.